I really wonder how many of Patton Oswalt's lines were improvised, because I swear to God, most of his dialogue, you could probably find it on his Twitter feed right now. Hey guys, David here with a new review for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, and this time it is for the episode called Hot Potato Soup. A very baffling, in fact, arguably the most baffling episode title of Season 4 thus far, and it kind of makes sense if you're going to be bringing in Patton Oswalt to reprise his role as Agent Keonig, or at least the Keonig brothers. Bring him back here to kind of include him into this whole hot potato game of trying to find Darkhold, and this Darkhold being passed around amongst these Keonig brothers, and ultimately having these two different factions, or almost three different factions, trying to find the Darkhold. Fitz and Gemma and Mac over there with the Radcliffe droid, Coulson and Sky or Quake, trying to track it down with one of the Keonig brothers, and then of course Radcliffe himself trying to find him for his own purposes. It was somewhat of a jumbled episode, and for the most part I thought it was kind of put together really well, because it made for a very fun episode, especially bringing in Patton Oswalt, who is still able to bring this sense of humor to not just Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, but pretty much anything that he's in. He brings his own brand of comedy that you just can't help but just chuckle. Every time he's on screen, every time he says something, and his delivery of that line always makes you crack up. So when you put him back into the S.H.I.E.L.D team, where not only is he funny and humorous, but he is also very much has a purpose with the team, because he's not just a baffling idiot. He's not just the comic relief. It shows at the beginning of this episode, when they say him, I mean both Keonig brothers. There's a reason for why they're agents. There's a reason for why they're part of this whole group, is because they know how to take care of themselves, especially the fighter amongst them. And that was cool until you started bringing in more and more Keonigs, one of which is actually female, and at first I was cool with it. But then we get this scene where we walk into this comedy club or whatever the hell, and the inclusion of the female Keonig, LT Keonig, I thought she was pretty cool on her own, but then when you combine her along with this hipster motherfucker with the faux hawk and saying, you're all followers, you know, fight the man, or that type of personality. When that scene came about with all of them together in the Quinjet, that was some ABC Friday night sitcom shit, okay? It was bad. I'm sorry, but it was bad, and I just couldn't take it. And thankfully, it was very, very short. We didn't have that many more scenes that replicated that model, and I'm hoping that we're not going to be replicating anymore from here on out, especially since by the end of this episode, we kind of bid farewell to this guy right here. So hopefully, S.H.I.E.L.D can stray away from falling into this slight little dip here with this style of humor, because Patton Oswalt as a singular Keonig on his own, or at least with maybe one brother, that's the maximum limit. Just one other brother is fine, especially when they're spitting 80s movies lines back and forth, especially very nerdy lines like the Star Wars franchise and all that. When they're spitting it back to one another, that's fine. But when you start to get too many, it starts to turn into like the Nutty Professor. And it pains me to say that that's not the only issue that I found in this episode, at least for me personally. The whole mission of trying to find the Darkhold and then keep it secure overall was fine. Coulson going in, doing their thing, all that was cool. But there were a couple of things that were kind of like damn if you do, damn if you don't type of situations, where you have the Darkhold inside of this suitcase, inside of a library. And when you have this setup like this, you can't help but wonder, why don't you just replace the book inside with just some random ass book, and then you throw it to the bad guys? On the one hand, I'm tired of seeing that trope, because I've seen it done so many times, where they throw like this satchel or this bag or this some type of thing that encases the MacGuffin, and they throw it over to the bad guys for an exchange, and the bad guys don't do the smart thing of looking inside the bag, which they didn't do here. So that presented the opportunity for the Coulson team to switch the book. But on the other hand, I'm tired of seeing that trope. So like I said, damn if you do, damn if you don't. And it was in the climax of this mission that we saw the big reveal, at least with the Coulson team. We already knew, but Coulson and his team finally figure out, I don't know how they didn't, but by now they finally figure out that May was the LMD amongst their teams. And like I said, it was fine. It didn't bother me too much, but I felt like there could have been some stronger emotion in that scene when Coulson finally figures out, especially after having just Kiss finally sharing their first on-screen kiss that was designed to feel blank because that's not the real May, it's an LMD, so you're kind of supposed to feel that way, but I feel like some bigger, stronger emotions should have been played with, especially when you kind of tossed the idea around that these LMDs still feel like the original human body that they're replicating. They still got the thoughts, they still got the conscious. That concept was one of the most intriguing things that I found in the past couple of episodes that turned me around with this LMD storyline, and now they kind of just did away with it very quickly, especially since Coulson's not willing to burn the body. I feel like maybe that might come back to bite him in the ass, or the opposite, they could bring back those emotions that I was kind of hoping to quench out of that climax in this episode, so maybe they'll bring it forward later on. And then don't get me started on everything that was happening amongst that submarine. Our big reveal of who the captain is now. First of all, stop ripping off. Don't rip off Captain Phillips. Don't. Anton, Russian guy, oh my god, he's the most stereotypical Russian ever. Like, you guys could have done something a little bit different, and he's just the most bland Russian evil dude. He's drinking vodka with an onion, he's got the accent, and then on top of it all, he's got this plan to kill Coulson because he feels like he's the one that's connecting all these events. I mean, it was kind of cool to see a little throwback there to the very first Marvel movies of Phase 1 with him being at the crater site in New Mexico during the third movie, and that was all cool and everything, but really? You think that a human man is the one that's connecting all these alien activity together? I mean, a logical person will look at that and be like, okay, he's working for the people who are in charge of investigating these things, but because we already had the incident in Avengers, and it's pretty much common knowledge that everybody knows that aliens exist amongst the world because we gotta do with the hammer, and we got a big green guy, as it's often mentioned in these Marvel TV shows, both Netflix and on network television together. It's no longer like a conspiracy theory, Area 51 type of thing. It really isn't. So this guy's little motivation, to me, just doesn't feel so founded. It just makes the character all that much more bland, especially when he is taking a humongous pleasure in torture. And then on the other side of the room, we got Ada there, who's just one scene away from becoming a Resident Evil movie villain. A movie villain, okay? The Resident Evil movies, where all the villains are very badass with their BDSM suits and they're going around in slow motion. I swear to God. But moving on from the negative, to me the best part about the episode was Fitz. When I think that they couldn't flesh out more characters, just like they did with May last week, they did it again here with Fitz, where they actually revealed a little something about his past, more specifically his father, what type of relationship he had with him, why is it that he's very withdrawn and very much isolated character that is very surprising for him to take in someone like Simmons and kind of make her his girlfriend. Now, the way he acts and the way the type of personality that he is now fully explained by LMD Radcliffe talking about his father and saying that he knew him. I really want to explore that a little bit more, and to me that was the most captivating part of this episode, because it really brought the feels for a character who I always thought he could have been a bit much more open, but now there's a proper explanation behind that closed personality that he's always had. For a long while, I knew that when I'm watching a TV show and it has a very strong run of really awesome episodes back to back to back, there's going to be the one where they're going to fumble the ball just a tiny bit, because every show does it. Especially superhero shows. I mean, as much as people loved Arrow initially, I heard the most recent season's not all that great, and Flash, despite being very consistent with its quality of episodes, ever so often has that one where you're like, it was okay. And for me, it finally happened in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with this latest episode. I'm going to be giving it a solid 7 out of 10, but definitely not necessarily the best episode out of the LMD storyline, especially when you start to kind of undermine the things that made me like the last week's episode so much with that LMD turnaround. However, that is not to say that there's not any room for improvement, and definitely not saying that there's room to kind of explore these characters a bit more, because that's always the advantage of a TV show. You can go ahead and dig yourself out right out of that hole. That was my take on it. Please let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Do you think it was a little bit disappointing? Do you think it started to get a little cringe newsworthy there with all those Keonigs that will probably star in their own little spin-off series of their own. Meet the Keonigs. Please do not forget to like and share this video. Follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at DarkSpiderDavid. And of course, if you guys want to see more and more videos pop up in your feed, then of course hit the subscribe button. I cannot talk. I am Dark Spider David. It is late. I am tired. I am gonna go ahead and get some rest and some food. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.